Today we're going to talk about the bird dog exercise. So bird dogs is a common exercise that people use to work your core. It's commonly prescribed in physical therapy, and it's an exercise that people don't really understand and don't really do it correctly. I commonly see it being butchered in the gym, and there's all these crazy variations to it. So even when I show a bird dog the exercise to my clients, they'll look at me like, what is this for? I don't really understand what's going on here. I don't really necessarily feel anything working from a muscular standpoint. Just a side note, on the internet, I couldn't figure out who came up with the phrase bird dog or why it is called that. So if anybody knows, please comment on this video. But today we're gonna just go over the bird dog really quick, and I'll show you the most basic level 1 way to do it correctly. Okay, so quick, extremely basic anatomy of your core. There are muscles that go across your body that connect one shoulder to the opposite side hip, and on the other side doing the same thing. So what this does is that these muscles that diagonally connect across, kind of on both sides, making sort of like an X. So these are called sling systems, and it's what kind of allows rotation in the body, which is very important. So shoulder in connection with opposite hip. This allows things to twist. For example, a pretty fundamental human thing to do is run or sprint or walk. And that's why when you walk opposite hand, opposite leg. So you kind of pump your arms and your body twists a little bit. And when you run something like sprints, it's very important to, drive into creating a stiff core and driving off the ground and pumping the your arms become very important in running a sprint and generating power. So there's these muscles that kind of run across and connect everything, which is sort of what a bird dog is going to go after, is creating stiffness in those muscles. I mentioned stiffness before, so if you look up, one of the world's leading experts in back pain, his name is Dr. Stuart McGill. He's from Canada, and if you look up one of his very good books is called The Back Mechanic. It teaches you how to do some self-assessments and fixes on your own back pain. So Back Mechanic by Dr. Stuart McGill, excellent book. But in his teachings, he addresses what he calls super stiffness of the core. So doing different exercises. So he has 3 exercises that are his, main things, called the McGill Big 3. So that's a common phrase to talk about those 3 exercises that he commonly prescribes and talks about. And all those exercises are to create what he calls super stiffness in the core. So the principle is that the more stiffness you can create in the core and the more control you can have of this area, the better your limbs outside of the core are able to move. So sometimes when people have very immobile shoulders or hips, so if you're not able to move your legs and your arms, it's from lack of stiffness created at the core. So when your core doesn't feel stable, everything gets tight and it doesn't really allow you to move very well. So if you can create what's, he claims is super stiffness of the core, it allows everything to move better, because your spine, which is very important, from the pressure created through the super stiffness, your spine becomes more stable and your joints all move better. Okay, so actually moving into the bird dog, which is the only exercise we're going to go over today. So this is going to, like I said, try to create super stiffness in the muscles that work on opposite sides. So one shoulder in connection to the other hip. So you're going to be working in opposites. So I have the 2 AirX pads today. You could put your knee on any soft surface that elevates you a little bit above the ground. You can do it on the ground, just with your knees and your hands down. But I find that elevating your knees gives you a little bit more room to move, because your arms are usually longer than your femurs are. So when you elevate your knees, it gets those a little bit further up off the ground and allows you to have more space to kind of move in free space, instead of kind of banging into the floor all the time or whatever else is around you. So make sure you have plenty of room. And for me, I like to get one knee elevated up on some type of soft surface. So I'm going to put my knee on the AirX pads, and I want my knee right under my hips, and I want my hands right under my shoulders. So I'm only going to have one knee on the pad, so your other knee is just going to be floating in the air. Okay, so what you want to do is almost as if you were going to do something like a bear crawl. You're just going to try to get in this nice flat position, okay, with one knee on the pad and one knee is just floating next to the pad right on the ground. Okay, so what you're going to do is the hand that's in front of your knee that's on the pad, okay, is going to push forward, okay, with your hand open. The knee that's floating next to the pad is going to press back at the same time. Okay, so what this is going to do, so normally if you were kneeling on the ground with your hands in front, you'd have 4 bases of support. So you'd have both knees and both hands. You'd actually have 6 bases of support if you have your toes on the ground too. So what we're going to do is eliminate one hand and one leg on opposite sides. So then what's still on the ground, that other hand and the other knee, and those muscles that run across are going to have to stabilize to hold yourself in the same position because your other 2 bases of support have been ripped away from the floor. Okay, so when that happens, it creates this rotational force where you could kind of fall in either direction, okay, because the hand and the knee raise off the ground. So you have to stiffen through the core to keep the same position. So what you're going to do is one hand, opposite side leg. At the same time, you're going to punch the foot back and reach the arm forward. Okay, then what you're going to do is I like to touch wrist to knee in the center and expand back out. Okay, all while trying to just move the arm and the leg and not letting anything else on your body move. Okay, and this whole time, just like someone's going to punch you in the gut, you're going to try to create stiffness through the middle and just slowly keep meeting wrist to knee in the center and then pushing straight out. Okay, if you want to make it harder, if you notice I have my toes on the ground still, if you lift your foot up, okay, now you just have the knee and the hand and not the toes. So that's going to make it harder to balance, okay, because now you have even one less base of support. Okay, so if you do this, as you start to move, you'll start to wobble. You know, like I said, because those bases of support are being pulled away, your body's going to shift in different directions. The more stiffness you create at the core, the more controlled you can perform that movement. So you shouldn't have any, so stability is really minimizing any unwanted movement. So as you're moving through this exercise, which I'll show you at a different angle on the other side. Okay, so knee goes on the pad, hands go down, other knee's floating. Okay, so now my right leg and my left arm are going to come in, wrist to knee, and push back. So when you're in this top position, you want to take one hand and push it as far as you can forward. Back foot's going to push as far as you can back in a straight line, and then you're going to squeeze back into the center. Okay, all while staying really balanced and minimizing any wobbling or anything side to side. So as you get tighter, 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 you'll learn how to have more body awareness, create more stiffness, and do that movement more controlled. So the idea is to do it as controlled as possible. Bird dog is a great exercise to warm up with to create body awareness, get some blood flowing through the core, start to mobilize your arms and your legs. So you could do it as a warm-up exercise, and you could do, just 1 or 2 sets. If you feel like you're struggling with it, I would work on it more often. But, I would normally set up like that, and I'll just go until I either start to really get pretty tired or if I start to really lose my balance. So if you really start to wobble, just start over, take a breath, try to stiffen at the core, and just move that opposite arm and leg as controlled as you possibly can, and just work on having more body control and body awareness. It's also a great way to end your workout. So if you just did a workout and you want to kind of cool down and just finish up and do some core work, you could get down on the ground, knees down, hands in front. And like I said, do each side, and don't think of how many reps you're going to do, but just think about how good you could do each rep. So think of it as just one at a time. I'm going to try to do a really good one. If that went well, I'm going to go touch wrist to knee in the middle, try to do another really good one, all while keeping my breath going, staying really tight, and just adding a little bit of movement and just getting in those positions. So it's a great way to start to build, like I said, the connection between the opposite sides of your body and those sling systems like I talked about before, and start to create a little bit more core control, which ultimately, if you're able to stiffen those muscles better and create more stability around the spine, you're less likely for things like back injuries and back pain, which is why you see that exercise commonly prescribed in something like physical therapy. But I feel like they never really give a lot of background information about what you're really trying to accomplish and what that exercise should really look like. So it's about stiffness, it's about moving in a controlled manner and really controlling the position of your body while creating just a lot of stiffness through the middle. So you're in control of of your limbs, so you're not losing your balance and you're moving very controlled, and you're trying to stay as tight as possible, but not too tight where you can't move. So you're trying to still breathe, but you're moving your limbs. So it's a good way to increase mobility as well that way. You know, it kind of lubricates the joints, so it's a good warm-up exercise in that way. But if you have any other questions about the exercise itself, you know, shoot me a message or a comment on this video, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions. So I hope those explanations make more sense. So if you see someone doing a bird dog, or if you're going to try it, you know, I hope that makes more sense to you now.